With the hype cycle for the next expansion beginning to get going in the near future, I've been taking a look at some of the facets of FF14 that I feel could use some tender loving care. Over the last couple of weeks, I've discussed the skewed nature of the party finder and the utterly antiquated early leveling experience. But today is the big bad, the shadow looming over all of us, the villain in our midst, the gearing system. I would say it's problematic, but that would be giving it too much credit. It's mist, vapid, nothing. It's there? It exists? In fact, maybe I'm being too harsh. I should be more fair. If it were competing for a Most Fun award versus Sonic 06,
I've got to hurry and save Elise.
I think it would win. At least some of the time. Either way, today we're going to talk about it. What's the issue? How can Square Enix fix it? Is there any hope of them doing so? We'll have a good old yap about it all. Before I jump in, if you want to support deep dives and discussions about FF14, please do consider subscribing. Final Fantasy XIV's gearing system is one that hasn't really changed in any major way for many, many years. It has its positives. It's easy enough to comprehend that even the most casual player can understand what they must do with just a couple of sentences of explanation. Item level go up, strength go up. Up is good, unless it's your cortisol levels the moment somebody dies during arena split. There are substats that provide minor benefits that you rarely need to think too deeply or even care about. It's at least consistent, you always know what you're going to get, and you can expect with every patch to attain that newly released treadmill of loot by the same methods you always have. But for a long time now, I've wanted some changes. As expansion after expansion goes by, it becomes more and more antiquated, and feels increasingly out of place in the current landscape of the game. It isn't just an issue of gear design either. You can't just slap some interesting set bonuses or change the stats of current pieces and call it a day. It won't work. That's because Square Enix's philosophy when it comes to gear runs much deeper, and if we want to see real change, they need to strike directly at the root of the issue. And that root of the problem is simple. Gearing is boring. But why? What's wrong with it? Well, firstly is the simplest answer. Gear acts as a raw number increase and doesn't influence how you play at all. For a vertical progression game, it sounds like that's the natural state of things, and to an extent, it is. New gear needs to have a pure numerical advantage over that which came before to maintain the status quo, yes, but that doesn't need to be all it has. You don't need to look at gear and ask, what does he even do? It could also have tangible gameplay effects that incentivize you to pursue particular sets or pieces, a reason to make a choice, so that you can care about it. Right now, there is no real difference between level 10 starter equipment and level 100 best in slot gear in how they affect the gameplay itself. It is optional, but past the point of giving you freedom. Right now, gear is simply a means to an end. You need it purely to access higher level content and then beat it marginally faster than you could before. Your interaction is the exact same in both cases. You do the same rotation, at the same speed, with the same priorities. In my opinion, gear should not be just a means to an end. There is no excitement. There is no friction. There is no space for choice. There is no space to make a mistake. There is no advantage or disadvantage. I would like it to be more than that, to be an avenue of expression and a symbol of both your efforts and your gameplay. I suppose it isn't all bad. Right now your Dragoon can backflip off the arena exactly the same in every timeline, and I suppose that warms the heart. You'd think gear would be interesting at a baseline though, right? You get totally different stats, and those should make a real, noticeable shift, except it isn't, and it doesn't. In part, that is because stats are such a solved game in FF14, and they have such minute influence on your playstyle, that the majority of players likely don't even notice.
And it tastes just like a real kind of water out there. It tastes
Fuckhole.
Most of your stat gains are in essence minor gains to your critical hit rate or damage, to the size of your baseline attacks, or to your defensive capabilities. You could argue that spell speed, skill speed, and piety possess the greatest tangible effects, being that you gain a little bit more mana with every server tick, or speeding up your GCD a microscopic amount if you stack literally hundreds of one of the speed stats. Once again, it's a case of balance. It's okay to have some stats that act purely as a stat stick enhancement, but when for all intents and purposes it's practically all of them, it goes too far, and it makes it all too easy to make everything feel like a varying shade of grey. But the problem isn't just in the gear itself, it exists before even that point. What I'm referring to is that gear power is not particularly interesting in how you obtain it, and even as the current landscape of FF14's endgame grows, for some reason this just doesn't really seem to. Right now in patch 7.4, your routes to best in slot are simple: weekly tombstone capping, weekly savage clears, and painstakingly waiting for enough upgrade materials through drops and pity to get those tome items to maximum item level. Ironically enough, it was the same back in 3.0. Your best in slot will be a mixture of those two sets, no exceptions. When 7.5 releases, an easier method to grab those upgrades will present itself through hunts, and Ultimate will offer a new weapon angle. That's about it, aside from pity options that come far later like the Relic. That is despite the fact that we got a new piece of endgame 4-player content just a month ago. They decided to have that not factor into the gearing curve at all, not even as an alternative option. Once in a blue moon there is a side grade, chaotic, or that one time in Heaven's Ward they decided to let you get proto-ultimate accessories from the Alliance raid. If we get a little more granular off that basis, I think there are a handful of specific problems I'd love to see addressed. Firstly, gearing alt jobs takes too long and is uninteresting to do, which is absolutely crazy considering the fact that one of the main selling points of the game as an MMO is the armory system and how it allows you to job swap on a whim. You'll spend weeks shambling around to complete the work of capping your tombstones and doing your savage to reach your final complete gear set on your main job, and it can take anywhere between 4 and say 12 weeks depending on luck. I think that's reasonable. It isn't the worst to have a little time gating there. But then, when you move over to an alternative job, it is once again exactly the same. No expediting of the process, no consolidation thanks to the work you've put in already, no added convenience. Because gear acts as the gateway for you to even access certain pieces of content, not being able to get it on alts can either force you into suboptimal circumstances if you decide to job swap, or exclude you from participating in that duty entirely. It just acts as a limiter in the type of fun you're allowed to have. After you've jumped the hurdles once, secondary roles should be far quicker. A small part of this, and I do genuinely mean small, is the 450 tombstone cap still being the standard, despite us having over 20 jobs now. No week-on-week increase, no alternative pathway to accrue or sidestep tombstone gear, no added methods to increase power elsewhere or expedite upgrade materials to make it less painful. Not even a reduction in the cost of those big multi-week investment, like chest or legs. So now, if you decide to do something truly devious, like, I don't know, buy one of the 21 available tombstone weapons, you're setting your already glacial gearing pace back even further. It's like, what, between 2 and 3 months to get a full tombstone set for one roll? If you're really lucky, you'll be done about 3 months after the next tier releases. Actually, can I have a little moan about something silly? Why is it that Melee have 3 different left side sets, whereas every other DPS role shares 1? I can understand wanting to split them at least a little when you have 2 different main stats within your role, in this case strength and dexterity, but right now we split the strength jobs down the middle as well for seemingly no reason. If you're a melee DPS, you are far more limited in what you can play than a caster or physical range would be, or even a tank and a healer. Isn't that kind of lame? I know some people would argue that consolidation here is a terrible idea because of yada yada job fantasy or something, but personally, I don't really care. I just want my melee friends to not be forced to only swap to Reaper after gearing Dragoon. Give them a modicum of freedom. Lastly, and by no means least off the top of my head, the Relic release is far too late and has seemingly been intentionally made obsolete by the developers the minute it comes out. Nowadays, it doesn't even come out until near enough halfway through an expansion, which I would argue is borderline criminal, seeing as the whole point of it is a weapon that grows with you over time, and when it does eventually release, it scales in power so astronomically slowly that it's worthless for any function aside from catch-up. It desperately needs a shot in the arm and some serious reconsideration from a functionality standpoint. Do I have all the answers? No. Am I going to throw Yans at the wall and see what sticks? Absolutely. I encourage you to do the same in the comments section if I'm being honest, because I'd love to see if you have something. At least on stream, when we have conversations about topics like this, it always seems like somebody pulls a good idea out of left field that I've never thought of. Firstly, to loop back on the most recent point, the Relic weapon needs to launch sometime within that first patch of an expansion. That being somewhere between 0.0 and 0.1. And not just the weapon, but Relic armor as well. But these unique Relic weapons and armor should be far more than they are right now. Allow you to customize their glow colors, put the work in to make that happen. Give them the customizable stats they have right now, but give each a passive effect or set bonus that you can feel on your job. Let that passive grow with you. I'm not going to sit here and give you a list of what everyone should do, because firstly, I'm not a game developer and thus not being paid to do so, and secondly, I'm sure the developers that created the likes of the level 1 have more creativity than I could muster. But they could make Dragoon jumps gain an additional effect, or white mages can use a partially charged misery with it, or Monk's skill speed goes down to that crackpot skill speed botcher build that was super fun to play. Just cool effects that change things up in some way. More gear in general could benefit from this really, but the Relic should feel really special. It should feel job defining, and like you desperately want it for a use that isn't necessarily item level. Maybe instead of a combat boon, it unlocks unique animations for some of your attacks even. That could be cool as well. Tomestones. We could eject them out into space or something, I'd be okay with that. Alternatively, speed up gearing alt jobs. Keep the current tombstone cap, I'm okay with it, but make it so that buying secondary rolls are far quicker. One system I'd be very much in favour of is buying slots with your tombstones rather than buying equipment pieces. You can split it up by Disciple of War and Magic. So say you buy the Disciple of War chest piece with tombstones, you can then purchase the melee, physical, ranged and tank chests. So now, in order to fully purchase all of the tome sets, it'll take capping for little over the duration of one single patch. You're still time gated, and the overall structure of that weekly loop doesn't change, and even the gearing cycle of your main, but you are able to use the armory system for its intended purpose. You could also do other things, like increase the tome cap week on week, allow subsequent sets to be obtainable via uncapped tomestones, or honestly at this point a million other options. We also need to have more routes to max item level. The current status quo is unacceptable. More upgrade material sources, more deviation from the norm. No more Criterion situation, please, I beg of you. The endgame should feel wide and vast and like a fairground of options, many of which feed back into your power in some way based on the challenge you overcame. There's also one big thing I would change about Savage. I'd have it unlock on the release of the odd patch, completely. If you want to farm every single Savage weapon the day 0.3 releases, or in this case 0.5, go ahead, knock yourself out, we're not stopping you. Really, I just hope that whatever happens, Square Enix are thinking about this, considering it. They have discussed reconsidering everything from the ground up going forwards, and that they would like to avoid falling into complacency. And this is absolutely part of it. Really, The form that it ends up taking isn't as important to me as the concept of them making changes with a goal and plan in mind is. I believe in this studio after all this time. Gear matters, even if it's a vertical progression MMO. It needs to be interesting and thoughtful so that people can get excited about earning it. The upfront effort will pay dividends in the future in the form of player engagement. There isn't long until the first FanFest, and while I'm not really expecting them to deep dive and cover topics like this at the first one, I am excited to see what they're cooking.